My name is Emily Grace Lawson. I am 27 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have lived like a shadow in my own family. My older sister Charlotte was the star, the golden child everyone admired. I was just there, present but invisible. Every laugh at the dinner table, every framed photo in our living room, every proud post my parents wrote online, it was always about her. I kept telling myself one day things would change. One day I would matter to them. Maybe if I worked harder. Maybe if I stayed quiet and gave them no reason to complain. Maybe if I sacrificed enough, they would finally look at me with pride instead of disappointment. That belief carried me through countless moments of rejection. It carried me into adulthood. It even carried me into the night before my sister's wedding in Ashford, Kentucky. I had spent weeks preparing for this day, arranging decorations, negotiating with vendors, coordinating everything so Charlotte's wedding would be flawless. I barely slept, pouring myself into the work as if my worth depended on it. Because maybe, just maybe, it did. And then it happened. I misplaced a single box of centerpieces, delicate glass globes. I had spent nights sourcing from antique shops. One box left behind in my apartment after another sleepless night. When I walked into the house with the rest, my mother Eleanor noticed instantly. Her eyes narrowed like knives. "Emily, where are the rest of the decorations?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through bone. I froze, clutching the box in my arms. One is still at my place. I'll go back and get it right now." But she didn't let me finish. "You forgot?" she hissed. "You always forget. You always ruin things." My father, Richard, set down his coffee mug, his expression already cold. "We've been patient with you, Emily. Too patient. The truth is, the greatest gift you could give your sister on her wedding day is to disappear from this family permanently." His words slammed into me like a blow to the chest. I looked at Charlotte, hoping for her to speak, to defend me, to say anything at all. But she only stared at the floor. I felt my throat tighten, tears burning the corners of my eyes. But I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't fight. I turned, walked to the door, and slammed it shut behind me. And in that moment, I knew something had ended forever. When people in Ashford saw the Lawson family, they saw perfection. My parents, Eleanor and Richard, owned a respected law practice on Main Street. Charlotte was their prodigy, the daughter who could do no wrong. And me? I was the filler in the family photo, the quiet one people forgot to mention. The favoritism began early. Charlotte's report cards were taped proudly on the refrigerator, her trophies displayed in the living room cabinet. When I brought home drawings or essays, they were brushed aside with a quick, "That's nice, Emily, but look what Charlotte accomplished." I remember being 8 years old, clutching an art ribbon I'd won for a drawing of the Ashford Town Square. I ran to my mother, expecting at least a smile. She glanced at it once before muttering, "Cute hobby, dear, but Charlotte just placed first in her math Olympiad. That's real talent." I felt my ribbon crumple in my fist, as if her words had turned it to paper ash. Playtime wasn't any better. If Charlotte and I argued over a toy or a swing in the backyard, the verdict was always the same. "Emily, stop being selfish. Let your sister have it." Richard never interfered, just patting my shoulder later with, "Family harmony matters more than winning." It sounded noble, but what he really meant was, your feelings matter less. By middle school, I had learned the art of disappearing. I stopped bringing home projects, stopped speaking up at the dinner table. Silence became my shield. Still, Eleanor's criticism found me. She commented on my clothes every morning, always too plain, too wrinkled, too unflattering. Even when I was slim, she'd purse her lips and say, "That shirt makes you look sloppy. Change before school." I stopped trusting mirrors because her words replaced my reflection. High school amplified the divide. Charlotte was the honor student, the athlete, the social leader. She had her acceptance letter to an elite university pinned to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a crown. When I entered a regional design competition and won second place for an architectural model, my father looked over at once and said, "Why not accounting like us? That's a stable career." Your sister already has internships lined up. Every attempt I made to shine ended the same way. Eclipsed by Charlotte's spotlight, I felt like a ghost living in my own home. A ghost who cooked, cleaned, smiled on command, but never really existed in their eyes. And deep down, I knew that all the years of being invisible were leading to something. I just didn't know how brutal the breaking point would be. By the time Charlotte announced her engagement, I had already accepted that my role in the family was secondary. Still, when Eleanor asked me to help plan the wedding, a spark of foolish hope lit inside me. Maybe if I poured myself into this, if I made every detail perfect, I could finally prove I belonged. I threw myself into the work. Every evening after my shift at the museum, I sat at my tiny kitchen table with notebooks, vendor lists, and spreadsheets. I spent hours choosing flower arrangements, white peonies because I remembered Charlotte once pointing at them in a magazine. I argued with the caterer until I secured her favorite dish, roasted chicken with herb potatoes, no garlic, because of Eleanor's so-called sensitivity. The guest list nearly broke me. Eleanor insisted on inviting half the town's elite: judges, bankers, church leaders. It meant tracking down more than 100 addresses, sending formal invitations, and managing RSVPs. I double-checked every single one, because the thought of making a mistake made my stomach knot. And then there were the decorations. I stayed up past midnight crafting personalized place cards with delicate lettering, hand-painting each name. My savings, meant for a design conference in Nashville, vanished into deposits, fabric samples, and custom stationery. Charlotte, meanwhile, was barely involved. She texted vague approvals. "Looks fine," or "whatever you think." When she visited home, she spent more time on her phone than discussing plans. Still, my parents acted as if she had orchestrated everything. Eleanor praised her style. Richard toasted her ambition at dinner. My name never came up. I wanted so desperately for their approval that I pushed harder. I bought Charlotte a gift, a vintage emerald pendant I had stumbled upon at an antique shop. It cost more than I could afford, but I pictured her face lighting up when I gave it to her, maybe even thanking me in front of everyone. One evening, I stopped to see to buy the house to deliver some contracts. As I set the binder on the table, I overheard Charlotte laughing in the next room. "I can't believe Mom and Dad let Emily handle all this. She'll mess it up somehow." My stomach dropped, the binder suddenly heavy in my hands. I wanted to walk away then, but I didn't. I told myself maybe she was just stressed, maybe she didn't mean it. I clung to the hope that the wedding would be my chance, the chance to finally hear the words I had been waiting my whole life for. "Good job, Emily." The day before the wedding felt like walking through a storm I couldn't escape. I had been up since dawn, double-checking the music playlist, confirming the cake delivery, ironing out seating arrangements. My apartment was a chaos of boxes and papers, but I told myself it would all be worth it once the wedding unfolded flawlessly. By late afternoon, I drove over to my parents' house with the last batch of decorations. I carried a box of glass orbs I had sourced from antique shops, fragile little centerpieces meant to glow under candlelight. As I set the box down in the kitchen, I realized one was missing. My heart sank. I'd left the second box back at my apartment. "Emily?" Eleanor's voice cut like a whip. She was standing near the counter, arms crossed, her eyes narrowing. "Where are the rest of the decorations?" I tried to steady my voice. "I still have a box at my place. I'll go grab it now. It won't take long." Her hands slammed against the counter. "You forgot? After everything I trusted you with?" I flinched at the word trusted. Richard looked up from the living room couch, his coffee cup poised in his hand. His face was carved from stone. "We knew this would happen. You always ruin things." Heat rushed to my cheeks. "I've been handling everything alone for weeks. One box doesn't change." "Stop!" Eleanor's voice was sharp enough to silence the air. "You're careless, Emily. Always have been. Your sister would have had this handled months ago." Charlotte was by the stairs, her fiancé Daniel beside her. They had just come back from the rehearsal dinner. I looked straight at her, hoping for something. A word, a defense, even a glance. But she stared at the floor. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, scrolling on his phone. Richard stood, his jaw tight. The truth is, the best thing you can do for Charlotte tomorrow is stay out of sight. Disappear. For good. The room fell silent. Even Eleanor's friend, who was arranging flowers, froze in place. My chest burned as though all the years of rejection were crashing into this single moment. I swallowed hard, set the box on the floor, and said quietly, "Fine. You'll get your gift." Then I turned, walked out, and slammed the door. The sound echoed through me, like the final crack of a bridge collapsing. I knew there was no going back. The next morning, the wedding day, I didn't dress up. I didn't even brush my hair. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. A friend from work had agreed to live stream the ceremony for me. When the video popped up, there they all were. Charlotte glowing in her lace gown, Eleanor and Richard raising their glasses, laughter spilling out of the barn venue I had spent months perfecting. They looked radiant, like my absence had lifted a weight from them, like I had never existed. And yet, instead of shattering me, something inside clicked. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth clearly. They didn't want me there. They never had. I had been breaking myself into pieces for their approval, and all it earned me was exile. That clarity burned away the tears. I wasn't defeated. I was done. That night, I called a lawyer I had met at a professional mixer months earlier. Caroline Hayes, sharp and kind, listened as I laid out the whole story. The years of favoritism, the dismissal, the way they used my money for family expenses, but claimed it as theirs. Her response was firm. "Emily, you have rights. Those joint accounts you set up to help your mother, they're mostly your contributions. You can freeze them to prevent misuse. If you want to leave, you can protect yourself legally first." The next day, I met with her in her office. Signing the paperwork felt like cutting the first chain from my neck. By evening, the accounts were frozen, with a trust created to cover only legitimate expenses. No more blank checks for Eleanor and Richard to drain at will. Then I called a real estate agent known for quick cash sales. My townhouse, my so-called sanctuary, was worth more than the offer he made. But I didn't care. Speed mattered more than profit. I signed the sale within a week, the keys handed over like the final goodbye to Ashford. My resignation email to the museum took less than 10 minutes to type. "Personal reasons," I wrote. 9 years of work, erased in a single click. Packing was harder. I stood among my furniture, clothes, books, all the things that told the story of a woman who had tried too hard for too long. In the end, I kept only what mattered. My laptop, 2 sketchbooks, a few outfits, and the emerald pendant I had bought for Charlotte but never gave her. Everything else was sold or donated. When I zipped my suitcase and loaded it into my car, I felt weightless. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running away. I was setting myself free. 3 days later, after miles of highway and too many cups of gas station coffee, I crossed the state line into North Carolina. My destination was Seabrook, a quiet coastal town I had picked almost at random. It wasn't famous, it wasn't crowded. It was simply far enough from Ashford to feel like another world. I found a listing for a weathered cottage overlooking the marsh. The landlord asked no questions when I signed the lease under my middle name, Grace. Not Emily Lawson, the failure daughter, just Grace, a woman nobody knew. The cottage was imperfect, creaky floors, leaky faucet, windows that stuck when the humidity rolled in. But it was mine. For the first time, no one was watching, no one was demanding, no one was comparing me to Charlotte. I set up a small workspace in the corner with my laptop and sketchbooks. I built a simple website offering design and illustration services for museums and local businesses. Within days, small freelance gigs trickled in, logo sketches, brochure layouts, historical drawings. The money wasn't much, but every dollar felt like freedom. One morning, needing caffeine, I walked into Harbor Brew Cafe on Main Street. Behind the counter was Maya Torres, the owner, a woman in her 40s with curly hair and a smile that disarmed me. She slid my coffee across the counter and said, "New face, huh? Seabrook's good for new beginnings." Her words stopped me cold. She couldn't have known how much I needed to hear that. I smiled back, murmuring, "Yeah, something like that." For a while, life was quiet. I ran along the marsh trails at sunrise, let the salt air sting my lungs, and learned how silence could be a friend instead of an enemy. But peace never lasts when lies travel faster than truth. One afternoon, I opened my old phone, the one I had shoved into a drawer, and saw dozens of notifications. My mother, Eleanor, had posted publicly on Facebook. Our daughter Emily abandoned us and stole money meant for the family. She ruined Charlotte's wedding and disappeared. The comments were brutal. Richard had written, "We trusted her, and she betrayed us." Friends from Ashford chimed in with pity for my parents, disgust at me. I closed my eyes, the screen burning in my hand. I hadn't stolen a thing, I had protected what was mine. Yet here they were, rewriting the story, painting me as the villain. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I set the phone face down and let the silence hold me. Because for once, I didn't owe them my voice. If I thought my silence would end their attacks, I was wrong. Within a week, my parents escalated their campaign against me. They weren't content with Facebook posts. They started feeding their version of events to anyone who would listen. The Ashford Community Bulletin, a small-town news site, ran a short piece. Local couple claims daughter drained family accounts and abandoned them before eldest daughter's wedding. They quoted my mother's tearful statement, "We gave Emily everything, and she betrayed us when we needed her most." Reading those words felt like being stabbed in the chest. They had banished me, but now they wanted sympathy. And the only way to get it was by turning me into the villain. I forwarded the article to Caroline Hayes, my lawyer. She called me the next morning, her voice steady but firm. "Emily, I've already prepared documentation showing your contributions to those accounts. Every dollar was yours. The trust we set up is covering your mother's prescriptions and utility bills. They can't prove a thing." Her reassurance steadied me, until the twist came. Caroline explained that Eleanor had recently submitted requests to withdraw large sums, $5,000 for wedding recovery costs and $15,000 for medical emergencies. Both were denied for lack of documentation. My heart sank. They hadn't just been lying about me, they had been trying to exploit the system I'd created to protect them. That night, I received an email from Charlotte. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." Her words were simple. "I didn't realize how bad things were for you. Mom and Dad were out of line, but they're struggling now. Please come home. We can fix this." I read it twice, waiting for some flicker of sincerity. But all I saw was an echo of the silence she had offered me the night our parents told me to disappear. When she could have defended me, she hadn't said a word. I closed the laptop without replying. The next morning at Harbor Brew Cafe, Maya slid my coffee across the counter, her eyes catching the storm on my face. "Family trouble?" she asked gently. I hesitated, then whispered, "They're saying I stole from them, trying to guilt me back." Maya leaned closer, her tone sharp with understanding. "I walked away from a controlling family once. They pulled the same tricks, public shaming, fake emergencies. Best thing I ever did was stay gone. Ask yourself, Emily, if you go back, what changes?" Her question pierced me. The answer was simple, nothing. 2 weeks passed before I heard from them again. This time it was just one text from Eleanor. "We're family. Come home." For years those words would have torn me apart. I would have clung to them, convinced that maybe things were finally changing. But sitting on the porch of my marshside cottage in Seabrook, the screen glowing in the fading light, I felt nothing but clarity. I deleted the message without hesitation. The air smelled of salt and pine, the sun sinking into the water like fire meeting glass. My sketchbook lay open on my lap, pages filled with designs I had created in the quiet hours between freelance jobs. My little business was growing, slowly but steadily. Clients praised my eye for detail, not as Charlotte's sister, but as Emily, Grace, on my own terms. That night I painted again, something I had abandoned years earlier after my mother called it a waste of time. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming a part of myself they had stolen. The canvas filled with light and color, and for the first time in years, I didn't paint for approval. I painted because I wanted to. The guilt still tried to creep in sometimes, whispering that I had abandoned my family. But then I remembered that they had been the ones to push me out, to tell me to disappear, to choose silence over love. Walking away wasn't betrayal, it was survival. Charlotte sent one last message a week later. I miss you. I didn't reply. Missing me now didn't erase years of standing by while I was erased from our family. Life in Seabrook kept moving forward. Maya introduced me to her book club, where I met people who didn't know the Lawson name, didn't care about my past. They only knew the person sitting beside them, listening, laughing, adding her own story to the mix. For the first time, I felt like I belonged without having to earn it. Looking back, I realized something vital. Disappearing wasn't about punishing them. It was about saving myself. Sometimes love gets twisted into chains, and the bravest thing you can do is break free. Blood doesn't guarantee kindness. Family doesn't guarantee love. And your worth is never defined by those who refuse to see it. I vanished not to disappear forever, but to reappear as someone whole. And if I had to, I would do it all again.